Welcome to my Portfolio 1 presentation. My name is Sean Harris-campf, and I'm going to talk to you about the awesome paper that I just wrote. I'm just going to go through the 5 steps for Portfolio number 1. I'm going to focus on one of my 3 goals in this presentation here. The first goal that I selected dealt with Standard 1 Criteria B, which dealt with assessment strategies. The focus of this is in my world history class, where we teach a 5-paragraph essay. I've always assigned the essays in the past. They're always on the final exam, but I've always relied on the assumption that students would pick up the techniques while writing the 5-paragraph essay from their English classes. The result was a lot of variance. Some students did well, some students didn't do well, but my needs assessment helped me to realize that I had an opportunity for a more thorough approach to assessing writing. Instead of just assigning the 5-paragraph essay as a summative assessment on the final exam, I realized I needed to incorporate a formative assessment process that helps students develop the skills that prepare them for writing the final essay. Clearly, the most difficult part of the 5-paragraph essay for students in my classes has been the ability to develop a clear thesis. They usually write a body paragraph type responses on the tests in the world history class, but they don't have any comparable process for writing a 5-paragraph essay. So the goal that I established is to establish a writing and a peer editing process for the thesis sentence aspect of the 5-paragraph essay that incorporates formative self-assessment and peer assessment. I'm obviously very good at writing short goals. So step 2 dealt with proposed new learning, research, knowledge, skills, and application. The first question that I dealt with was, what do I need to learn more about? The thing that I decided to focus on was helping students write a clear thesis statement, how to do that. I also realized I needed more information on how to use a peer review or a peer editing process to help students get feedback for writing their thesis. I'd never really done any sort of peer review or peer editing before in writing. And then, in a related question, what professional literature would I use to meet my goal? And from reviewing a set of literature, I read several articles on the 5-paragraph essay in particular, and I realized that everyone likes to make fun of the 5-paragraph essay, that it's too rigid, it doesn't provide students enough flexibility, it inhibits creativity. But the thing that I was able to find, a couple people writing a defense of the 5-paragraph essay, making the argument that it may not be perfect, but it does help students organize essays. And in particular, it helps them develop a thesis, and the thesis really being the center of the organization for the entire essay. The other issue was that I have way too many students for me to assign a full essay for every unit that we cover and then have them write a full 5-paragraph essay. I would never have enough time in order to do all that grading. So I needed to create a solution that would allow me to teach the thesis part of the 5-paragraph essay without having to grade the entire essay every single time. And the solution I found was from an article from a University of Georgia professor named Tara Starr Johnson, and she talked about, and actually she was quoting a teacher in the study that she was doing. The teacher proposed the solution where the students would write an outline for the essay and then just focus on writing a good thesis sentence for the essay without writing the entire essay. The next part of step 2 dealt with professional growth activities. There were 2 main things that I did in terms of my professional growth activities. The first one is to conduct some academic research, to read articles in a book about the topic of assessing writing, and in particular assessing the 5-paragraph essay. And then the second part had to do with a series of professional growth team meetings that I had at my school that allowed me to kind of clarify my goals. In particular, with academic research, I read a book called Assessing Writing Across the Curriculum, which actually led me to choose this as a goal area because I read it over the summer and I realized there were lots of areas in assessing writing that I had not been doing before, and it gave me some ideas in terms of formative assessment, in terms of having check-in points for students as they write and then revise an essay. I also read several articles that dealt in particular with the 5-paragraph essay and the ways in which you could teach the thesis writing part of the 5-paragraph essay. I was able to get a lot of good specific information about thesis writing from a couple websites. Harvard University has a good writing center thesis development website page that I used as well. And in the professional growth team meeting section, I met initially with my department chair, with my vice principal, and with Randy, and we hammered out kind of a rough draft of my goals, and then I met with the professional growth team several other times at school in order to clarify my goals and to clarify the activities, the classroom activities that I was doing in order to meet those goals. So step 3 deals with analysis of completed professional growth activities. The first is the feedback from the colleagues that I received was very good. It helped me to clarify and focus my goals, made sure that my goals were reasonable and achievable. I ultimately narrowed, I think, each of my goals. Certainly this particular goal started out with the entirety of a 5-paragraph essay and ended up just focusing on the thesis. The academic research, as I mentioned a second ago, gave me new knowledge to create classroom activities that will meet my goals. So step 4 dealt with what I felt was kind of the nuts and bolts of the entire project, and that's the evidence analysis and reflection. So a couple questions that I addressed here. The first one was what classroom instruction came out of my professional growth activities. So once I did all this research, once I did all this learning, what was I going to do in my classroom to change the teaching techniques that I use in order to meet my goals? And what I did is we do a current events assignment in the world history class, and I had each student, as we're covering a unit on Africa, research current events that were related to some aspect of Africa. And what the students then did is pretended that they were going to write a full essay on the relationship between the historical information we looked at with Africa and the current events research that they had been doing. And they had to create a thesis that would explain the relationship between the historical data and the current events data. That was the first part of the assignment. The second part of the assignment was to work in groups to edit and revise their thesis sentence so they would have a thesis that made sense, that was clear, and that gave a roadmap for what the essay was going to talk about. The next part about this, the next part of the evidence analysis was to go through the evidence I collected, and this really, for this goal, focused on exit slips that I collected from the students. And here are some of the interesting things that I found. The vast majority, probably about 4/5 of the students, said that the in-class activities we did, where they learned to develop a thesis, helped them to write a better thesis. So I do think that given the student voice from this project, there is evidence that the students improved their ability to write a thesis. Many students on their feedback exit slip said that their thesis sentence were more detailed and more descriptive and more complete than they would have been otherwise. About half of the students said that the peer review process helped them write a more clear thesis, and about half didn't. And that's actually one thing in the reflection that I was curious about, is to try to see why that was a lower number than the number of the people who felt the activities we did in terms of practicing them writing a thesis themselves were helpful. So my planned future growth goals, one is to develop a better process for the peer review part of what I did. I think that the teaching how to write a thesis sentence and breaking that piece apart from the overall essay made a lot of sense to the students. It helped them. I'm not sure the peer review part did quite as much, and so I think that one of the goals would be to improve the ability of students to work with one another to write a thesis, and then to take this as the first piece in a larger project where I'd be creating a writing process where we start with the thesis and work towards writing a whole essay and kind of work in chunks and work in and writing perhaps several rough drafts of an essay they'd perfect over the course of the first semester. The last step in this process was the professional contributions, and I highlighted a couple different professional contributions. The first one dealt with curriculum advocacy, and there are two things under this. The first was I proposed several years ago a new international relations course at Holy Names, and we actually went through a pretty extensive process of getting feedback from students on whether or not they'd want a general political science class or a specific focus class. The students overwhelmingly said they wanted a specific class like international relations, which is what I proposed to our curriculum council and ultimately the class that was adopted. It's a class I've taught for the last several years now. The other significant thing that I've done within my department over the last several years is to be involved and really advocate for new textbook adoptions. In the last 2 years, we've adopted a new world history textbook and a new U.S. history textbook. Both of these are more rigorous. They're probably at a higher reading level than the textbooks we had used previously, and try to tell history more as a story as opposed to just kind of a box score of here's the events, here's the people. And in terms of collaboration, two main things I highlighted in my paper. The first one is department read-arounds, where we work with the social studies department to calibrate the grading of essay questions. So we take one short answer question, everyone reads it, everyone gives it a grade, and then we talk about were our grades similar, were they different, why were they different, to make sure we're on the same page, and so we can get a chance to see how other people are reading short answer essays. The other thing that I highlighted was in-service planning, where I'm part of a planning team that we establish all the professional development activities we're going to do for our fall in-service week, the week before school starts. And in that sense, I get to help decide what areas of emphasis the school is going to focus on in terms of our overall professional development. So that was one small part of my overall portfolio. I hope that was helpful. I hope this format was at least not mind-numbingly boring, and have a fun rest of the class. Thanks a lot.